Now, according to a recent survey by China's Ministry of Civil Affairs, it seems that for most women in China, money and a house are prerequisites for a husband. The ministry, along with dating website Baihe, co-published a survey that asked over 50,000 people in China about their love lives in 2011. Of women polled, 92% said the basic requirement for marriage was a stable income, while nearly 70% agreed that a man must own a home before marrying. The results are nothing new, and similar surveys over a number of years all indicate that in the Chinese marriage stakes, cash and property beat love in poverty 9 times out of 10. Each time one of these polls is published, it elicits plenty of online response, with some criticising modern Chinese women for being over-materialistic, while others say that under current social circumstances, many women really have no choice. Now, recently, a well-known Chinese web portal, Sohu.com, opened a special web feature looking at changes in views on love and marriage amongst Chinese people, and above all, what the impact of 30 years of rapid economic and social development has been. Well, to see what's being said about this in the online community, let's cross over to the newsroom now, where our researcher, Julia Liu, is standing by. Now, Julia, I'm sure you're not one of these women who insists on seeing the house keys before the first date, but it seems you may be a minority. So just what sort of effect have these massive economic and social changes had on modern Chinese views of marriage is, well, according to Sohu anyway?
Well, don't be so sure, Fergus. But let's not go into that right now. And I'd like to point out first, we are not just talking about changes over 3 decades. Actually, this web feature follows changes over a much shorter period, the 5 years between 2007 and 2011. I've made a short summary of the main points. So let's start off with the survey on love and marriage for the year 2007. Now, at that stage, over 3/4 of people, 77%, thought the most important factor when choosing a spouse was personality and character, while economic background was a big deal for just 3%. The economic situation at that time, of course, was pretty good, and it seems people's views at that time were based more on emotion than financial concerns. And then when it comes to 2008, when the worldwide financial crisis began to really hit, the changes came as well. In 2008, nearly 11 million couples got married in China, which is the first time the number of weddings surpassed the 10 million. But meanwhile, the survey showed less belief in love conquers all. 70% of people now believe that similar family background and social status should be taken into consideration, while 74% of women said that they couldn't accept a husband who earned less than them. And the poster commenting on Sohu.com has this to say. The changes that occurred in 2008 had a huge impact on people's views on marriage. Factors like economic situation, house ownership, bank savings, and other assets are mentioned much more frequently. Both men and women started to feel more confused in that year.
Okay, that brings us up to 2009. So what happened after that?
Well, here's what the report says. The online dating website saw a great increase in registrations in the year 2008, with more people communicating on the internet and the continued economic downturn. Discussions about views on marriage became more popular. And new concepts like hunt marriage, which means hiring a headhunter to find a spouse, naked marriage, which means getting married without worrying about having enough money, and secret marriage, which means not letting others discover that you got married, were all invented in the year 2009. And here's a comment from one net users on what was happening in terms of love and marriage in 2009, saying, at that time, pressure from their own economic situation, society, and public opinion began to have an effect on many singles, especially female singles, who became more confused and simply started to go with the flow. One day, they were busy looking for a budget husband instead of wealthy men, just as home buyers now, during the economic crisis, looking for lower-priced houses rather than expensive villas. The next day, they would insist that they prefer a man with a good appearance and tastes. Well, now turning to the year 2010. And the key word to 2010, both on the economic and marriage fronts, is house. Actually, house prices started to become problematic from 2009. And the report says the economic outlook was still rather unclear in 2010. House prices increases in 2009 left a lot of uncertainty in the air in 2010. That was reflected in people's views on love and relationships too. And here, this poster says, yes, in 2010, most women believed that it was more reliable to marry a man who owned a house. At the same time, most men also believed that having a house was the basis of a marriage. And this basically meant that the road to marriage would be rockier if you didn't have a house.
Right, so now we're up to the most recent of these surveys, which covers 2011. What changes does the report feel the economic situation has had on people's views of marriage then? And what are net users' views on all these changes?
Well, one important point is that inflation was particularly bad in 2011, not just for property, but for many ordinary daily goods. And as for the impact, here's what the report has to say. Housing prices were already a thorn in the side of many singles looking to marry, now adding inflation, and people can't even afford daily meals. Two extremes were the results in terms of how people's attitudes to marriage changed. Some simply chose to get married no matter how, ignoring traditional concerns such as money, security, and houses. And some decided to maintain their high standards and stay single if they couldn't achieve them, which resulted in many 3S women, single, born in the 70s, and stuck. Now, here's some analysis from a poster commenting on last year's survey, saying, people became more realistic in 2011. While some older singles are struggling in terms of marriage, the divorce rate is getting much higher than before too. And as for the reasons behind these attitudes, net users have quite a lot to say. This poster thinks that people simply don't have any choice, saying, there are two kinds of sense of security, spiritual and material. With more pressure from life and uncertainty about marriage, marriages are kidnapped and held ransom by economic factors. Sadly, we can see the changes in what women care about most, from personality to bank saving to house property, while they prefer civil servants more than anything. And finally, from this poster, a happier conclusion of sorts, saying, yes, we can't deny that the economic environment has changed Chinese people's views on marriages a lot, but love is never absolute. Life changes. Look how the phrase fate love became suddenly popular among Japanese women last year. After the earthquake there, many women realized that the happier thing was to have someone to share their lives with till death, quite apart from any financial factors. After all, life is short. Those who worry about losing all the time will be the most likely to lose happiness.